The Fifth Element. Luc Besson's eccentric 1997 futuristic science fiction space opera, where Bruce Willis plays ex-US Marshal turned cab driver Corbin Dallas, when a mysterious being known as Lilu literally crashes into his cab. Lilu is a humanoid embodiment of the Fifth Element, and is needed to help destroy a massive evil in space that is threatening the safety of the planet Earth, and is hell-bent on destruction. Dallas and Lilu must travel across the stars in order to find 4 sacred stones to be used in a ceremony that destroys evil, while dodging the evil businessman known as Zorg, a greedy executive hell-bent on destroying the world for profit reasons. The Fifth Element is one bizarre film. I mean, what do you expect from a movie where Chris Tucker looks like he had his hair designed after Egon from the real Ghostbusters? So today we are going to explore this one-of-a-kind science fiction movie, which is kind of like a dive into pop culture of the late 90s. So let's get out the MULTIPASS as we look into 10 amazing facts about the Fifth Element. Don't get excited now. Mila Djokovic wasn't cloned, with now hundreds to thousands of her running around. The title of this number 10 slot is a reference to the amount of female actresses whom auditioned for the role of Lilu, the strange being who has a vast intellect and strength, with bizarre alien qualities and a love for MULTIPASS. Director Luc Besson himself saw about 300 of the 8,000 auditioning actresses. But it was Djokovic who won him over, on the account that, in his eyes, she can represent any culture, from Rome to Egypt or even from outer space. Given how bizarre Djokovic's performance is in The Fifth Element, the idea of her coming from outer space doesn't seem all that far-fetched. Number 9. Chris Tucker is no prince. At about the halfway mark of The Fifth Element is where things go real batshit insane, with the introduction of the Ruby Rhod character. A flamboyant gender-bender character who is loud, fast, and very hyperactive, and has a love of weird hairdos.
All night long. All night long. All night.
Well, Chris Tucker and his high-pitched voice may have made the character memorable, for better or for worse. However, it was the director's original vision for the Ruby Rhod character to have a touch of purple rain, as his original choice for the role was none other than Prince. But Prince turned down the role, so Chris Tucker it was. I like to think that Prince turned down the role because he was too busy doing the bat dance. But in actual fact, when he was shown the character's costumes designs, he found them too feminine, which is why he declined the role. And more interestingly enough, Chris Tucker based his performance on Michael Jackson. You know, just thought I'll throw that out there. Okay, seriously though, jokes aside, that would have been awesome if Prince starred in The Fifth Element. Just saying that sentence itself gives me chills. Number 8. Made up language. The unidentifiable language that Lilu speaks is a language that Mila Djokovic and Luc Besson made up. They literally sat down at some stage and actually created a language of random words they made up. The language consists of 400 words, and Djokovic and Besson kept the language fresh in their minds so they knew what each word meant by sending letters to each other in their made-up language, as a sort of way of keeping their made-up speech alive. So that means that somewhere out there is a piece of paper that says Big Bada Boom. I really need to see this piece of paper.
Yeah, big bada boom.
Big. Bada big boom.
Djokovic and Besson actually ended up getting married. Although their marriage was short-lived, I still wonder if they ever used their made-up language throughout their marriage. Number 7, Blue Diva. In The Fifth Element, there is quite literally a jaw-dropping moment where we see an opera diva perform a number on an intergalactic cruise ship. The song, which is from a pre-existing opera, ranges from sweet classical melody and then even goes into modern 90s dance techno sound. The whole scene, for lack of a better word, is literally awe-inspiring. The actress who played the diva was Luc Besson's then wife, Maïwenn Libesco, and she filled the diva's shoes and blue skin because the original actress scheduled to appear as the diva dropped out. And in the scene itself, the reason the cast and crew look at her in amazement is because they generally were amazed. As once Besco had her blue makeup applied, Besson kept her away from the rest of the cast and crew. So that time when she appeared on stage was the first time that her co-stars saw her. Number 6, The Sound of a Golden Eye. The Fifth Element's musical score was composed by French composer Eric Serra, and he has worked on many other Luc Besson projects, such as Leon the Professional, and more recently with Lucy. However, 2 years before The Fifth Element, Serra composed the music for the James Bond movie GoldenEye. And many people over the years have noticed that many of his musical cues from GoldenEye have just simply been reused in The Fifth Element, particularly in the action scenes. So if you've ever watched The Fifth Element and got a case of deja vu, well, that is probably because you've already heard some of the score before from GoldenEye. But to be fair though, Serra's haunting and powerful score that he uses in both GoldenEye and The Fifth Element is still pretty good and surprisingly works well with both movies. Number 5, it was supposed to be a trilogy. I was always confused by The Fifth Element's Australian VHS cover because it had the tagline, "It's Star Wars of the 90s", which bothered me because it's nothing like Star Wars. I mean, yeah, it's about good light and bad light, and it has spaceships, but that's about it. To me, it had way too much of an MTV music video funk vibe about it, and with Bruce Willis in the film being all Bruce Willis-ish, I actually felt it was more like a futuristic Die Hard movie. However, maybe it was meant to be closer to Star Wars than I originally thought, as Besson had apparently written 3 Fifth Element scripts, making it a Fifth Element trilogy. But sadly, for whatever reason, no sequels were ever filmed, and instead the director and his star Mila Djokovic went on to make a Joan of Arc movie instead. If I had to guess, I would say it's because The Fifth Element just wraps everything up perfectly. I mean, where do you go after Dallas and Lilu are getting it on in that blue sunbed thing? But that said though, part of me really wants to see where Luc Besson would have taken The Fifth Element in its sequels. But I guess we'll never know. Number 4, Oldman's Favour. So as mentioned, classic actor that everyone loves, and for good reason, Gary Oldman played the main villain Zorg, a corporate arms dealer douchebag who sees great financial potential in the destruction of the world. Oldman basically plays the part like a Southern American tycoon buffoon.
My favourite.
And although he's probably not as menacing to be a fearful threat, he still has great villainous comedic timing. However, Oldman starred in the movie as a favour to Luc Besson. You see, Oldman had previously starred in Besson's film Leon the Professional, where Oldman and Besson became good friends, and subsequently after that, Besson helped finance Oldman's film Nil by Mouth, a gritty tale about a dysfunctional London family. In other words, a movie that couldn't be further from The Fifth Element. Oldman wrote and directed Neil by Mouth. And to return the favour of Besson's financial help to get his film off the ground, Oldman agreed to star in The Fifth Element. Number 3. Facing the Foe. One of the most enjoyable aspects of having a hero to root for in fictional stories is also having a villain, as our heroes can only be as good as their enemies. And one aspect of this storytelling people seem to love is the inevitable scene where we see our main hero face off with the main villain. However, no such thing ever happens in The Fifth Element. Nope, there is never that scene that we all no doubt would have loved when Bruce Willis's Corbin Dallas has a showdown with Gary Oldman's Zorg. And not only that, but the two never even share any scenes together, which is really weird for an adventure fantasy movie, one of which that has a strong main hero lead and a strong main villainous lead. Although we see Zorg come face to face with Lilu and the priest Cornelius, he never shares any screen time with the main protagonist Dallas. No fisticuffs, no exchanging of words and wit, absolutely nothing. Imagine if there was a Bond movie where Bond never met the main villain, and said villain dies in a non-Bond related incident. See? That's just weird. Number 2. Alternative actor for Willis. The movie went into production in the early 90s, despite the fact it was released in 1997, and it was always Luc Besson's intention to cast Bruce Willis as the main lead Corbin Dallas. After all, after 1988's Die Hard, Willis was the number one choice of action tough guys throughout the 90s. However, in those early days of production, everything was touch and go, and Besson wasn't even sure if he'll be able to get Willis on board, so the number 2 choice to go to for the movie was Mad Max himself, Mel Gibson. I guess if you can't get John McClane in your movie, then go for Martin Riggs instead. To be honest, I don't quite know how I would feel about Gibson in the role of Dallas. I feel like it would have been very different, and may have even made the entire movie completely different. And maybe I'm just saying that because I'm so used to Willis in the role. But thankfully, when the ball got rolling on The Fifth Element, Willis came on board as the movie's star. Speaking of awkward casting, the movie literally starts with Luke Perry, as in that guy from Beverly Hills 90210, and that old farmer guy from The Vicar of Dibley. Yeah, quite an odd pairing indeed. Together at last, I guess? Number 1. Besson's inspiration. Luc Besson surprisingly started writing the story for The Fifth Element when he was just 16 years old. The French adolescent wanted to create magical stories and strange future worlds as a way of coping with his adolescent isolations. Living in rural France, the young teen with a taste of excitement found himself very bored, so creating these fantastical action-packed science fiction stories was a way of living out the excitement he obviously craved in real life. And Besson's futuristic story must have been very personal to him, as the story that he created when he was 16 wasn't ready to turn into a movie till he was 38. So the next time you watch The Fifth Element, remember you're watching something that was originally something a teenager thought up to escape his boring, lonely, mundane life. Well guys, that was my look into The Fifth Element, and by Fifth Element I mean the movie, not Lilu. Although I would like to check her out too. But never mind. I always feel like there is a fresh and strange uniqueness about The Fifth Element, which sets it apart from other conventional science fiction movies. Which to me is why the movie doesn't age, because it really actually doesn't belong in any time or trend. And its use of French humour also makes it even more remarkable and unique. Anyway, I'm Minty and MULTIPASS. See ya.
Miss, MULTIPASS.